Good day, welcome to South Africa Unfiltered. Igama lami ndinguMoyakazi Mxhosini and I'm your co-host. Namhlanje e-studio sithetha nge-leadership. Sithetha no Mr. Lubabalo Yandisa Ndzoyiya. Welcome Mr. and thank you so much for joining us. Can you please tell us more about yourself?
Thank you very much for having me. As introduced, my name is Lubabalo Yandisa Ndzoyiya. I'm a born and bred person from Bizana. Grew up here, did everything here. Left, of course, because of studies, came back because of work and all that. That's basically who I am.
All right, thank you so much. Ungakwazi ukusixolela kokuba i-leadership ingantoni, ithetha ngantoni leadership kuwe?
Well, leadership varies from one person to another, but from some of us, it's about being the voice of the voiceless, being there for those who need help, lending a helping hand to those that need the help, and also working, building relations with other people, moving our communities forward. That's a summary probably I can put around leadership.
All right. Then intoni inspireile ukuba ube kwicandelo leadership?
Well, it's a very different story for me, unlike people who choose that of passion. Of course, I've always been someone who is interested in the state of the current affairs. I've always followed politics, but because when I went to study, it was a bit difficult back then. When we went to study, I went to Nelson Mandela University. So when we got there, it was very difficult for us, particularly people coming from the Transkei, the old Transkei side. You'll find that there are people sleeping outside, people sleeping on the field, people will travel such distance. When you get there, you don't find a space, you have to travel back home and all those things. Challenges were serious back then. So I was one of the victims in that process. When we got there, with few of the gents that we left with from home, when we got there it was difficult. We could not find a place to sleep. I think for the first 3 days we used an office. That's how I met Sasko. So we used to sleep in the Sasko office, and then we met other people who are struggling like us. I met Luzuko from Lusigi. I met different people. So from then we knew that we have to fight for ourselves. We had to pass debate. That's how we ended up joining. A sad story that I can share, because now, it was said then, but now it's fine when I share it. When we got there was this guy from Zimkulu called Christopher Mngcwala. So this guy was a leader in the university back then. So when we arrived, he will assist us during the day, take us to relevant offices, trying to get us to secure space to study and secure funding. So afternoon, the guy will then ask that we go to a picnic. He will buy a box of wine, and then we'll buy something to eat, and then we'll go to a beach, probably drink there and sleep there. I only realized on the Thursday that actually there's no picnic. But the guy is just trying to be nice. So that's how then one joined those joint politics, and then as we moved, we got elected into structures, and then that was it for me.
Then intoni ekuqhubekisa like ekwenza ukuthi uqhubeke phambili like nokufuna ukuba leader, like intoni le ikwenza ukuthi lokhu uqhubeka until now?
Well, from the student movement side, I think there's been a lot of struggles for young people. I'm sure you will know that young people are struggling. I think in the past year we had about 700,000 matriculants that passed matric. And in total, in all universities and colleges combined, there were 136 spaces, meaning that we had about 600,000 young people who were not going to find a space to study. And those young people, they'll go to the streets, they fall into the social ills. You find them using drugs, you find them in teenage pregnancy and all those things. So part of being a social activist now becomes a responsibility in responding to those challenges, in making sure that particularly people who come from Alfrenzo and Bizana, to be specific, to make sure that they get those opportunities, to make sure that we push and change our communities. Because we grew up in a community where there was a lack of role models. People we knew that had money, it's people who were not working, it's people who never knew what they were doing. So we had to build a role model that has some credibility in terms of living in society. So we had to defy all odds. At our age, even if you can go now, we're Pennies or we're playing 90% of young boys, they see the bus number or they have some conflict with the law or whatever the case is. So you have to build a character that indeed becomes a role model in society. So that's what then keeps us going in participating in student movement, and also bringing these opportunities closer to home. You know, when you go that side, you realize that other young people, they study more conducive spaces, they access information easy, they get these things coming to them, but it becomes difficult when you come this side. So you have to go and take that information and bring it home. Then it becomes a responsibility that then one shares as part of bringing back to the community.
All right. What is your best leadership skill?
Well, to be a leader, you require a set of skills. It doesn't become one, but I think for me, it will be emotional intelligence and self-discipline, because you know, politicians will say that you must always have a good way of saying bad things, you know. So if you have emotional intelligence, it becomes easier for you to share things with people. It becomes easier for you to communicate, and you are sensitive to what you say to people, because when you're a leader, it's not what people say to you or what people say about you that matters. It's how you respond to them that matters, because what lasts is how you treat them. People might insult you, people might say things to you, but if you respond in the same way, that will last longer, because they will remember what you said. But how you respond to them then becomes more important. So emotional intelligence for me is important. Self-discipline, because if you respect yourself, if you carry yourself in a certain manner, people start respecting you, because they start seeing you in that manner that you're carrying yourself in. Because if you are always seen in the public space as a fighter, if you are seen in the public space as a person who treats himself or herself in that particular way, people see you in that particular way. So if you have self-discipline, you have emotional intelligence, I think it's one of the two skills that you will need to be a good leader.
All right. How do you handle difficult conversations with team members?
Well, you know, if you are working with a team, you ought to expect difficulties. Remember, usebenza ne-characters ngafaniyo. Omunye umuntu nenkani adalwe nayo, omunye umuntu uslow indalo, omunye they want to jump into things, you know. So if you, like I said, if you are a person on emotional intelligence, you are able to understand a character yomuntu osebenza nayo. Balo umuntu nenkani. So if you say something as umuntu omphikisayo, they will not take it light, but rather you suggest things xa communicate nayo lo ungumuntu ofuna ukuhlela incediswa um-aid. So if you have that skill, you are able then to communicate nabantu different. But the importance about a team, the word team kills individualism, you know. When you are working in a team, you must not want to shine. Uyabona xa sicula wena ufuna uvela wedwa sithina la, because you want to appear, you know. So if you are working with a team, if you make sure that everyone kill their self-individualism and they work as part of a team, it becomes easier to communicate. And if people understand their role in a team, because not everyone will do the same thing, you know. Useteksini uconductor akwazi ukufuna ukuqhuba, une responsibility yakhe to collect money, operate the door and do that. Udrive une responsibility yakhe to drive, navigate, put passengers where they're supposed to be. So if you have a well-coordinated team, if you are able to put your team into space, it becomes then easier to communicate. Of course, there are times where you must be decisive, you must be harsh, you must have vigorous engagements now as part of your team, so that they understand their responsibility, because the risk of one not understanding is that if one collapses, the whole team collapses. So you have to put them into line, and also you must expect that they will put you into line as well. Then if you have that relationship, where you go wrong, they will tell you, bro, I think you are out of order. If someone goes wrong, tell them, hey bro, you should not be doing A, B, C, and D. This is how you should be going.
All right. Tell me about your social activism journey. How have you grown from it, and share a story?
Well, my stories in most cases, I always said stories, you know, because of how my upbringing, you know. Well, I started joining generally social activism. Of course, outside the young things we do were back there in football and other. I became a member of the ANC Youth League, I think in 2007, if I'm not mistaken. I was very young back then. I remember there's a guy called Kolani, call him Umpago. He will recruit us as young boys, you know, to join the youth league. And I come from a very political family, so I had it easy joining the youth league. So we participated, we led in the branch, Ward 24 back then. And then my social activism became more sensible when I went to university, because when I joined SASCO, I think in my first year, I was elected as the theory chairperson of the branch, of course, because I had an understanding from the youth league. And the same year I was elected in the SRC. There's a structure called Opitani. It's responsible for students who are staying outside campus. So I led in that structure. And then the following year I was re-elected in the SRC. Well, it's not something good to say, but I think I served about 5 terms in the SRC in Nelson Mandela. Then, of course, we'll join other structures, join the ANC. We moved within the ranks and the politics. I became the branch chairperson of the ANC in Ward 1 in Nelson Mandela region. And I was then elected in South in 2018. South is an umbrella body of students. I was elected as the national organizer in the conference in Mpumalanga. So we're responsible with policy drafting, policy advising, reconstructing generally the higher education sector. And then from then I was then re-elected as the president that I'm serving now. I was then re-elected as the president of South. Of course, as we move, we get responsibilities. I was appointed in the tribunal board of NSFAS. So we're responsible for appeals, applications, and all those things for NSFAS. And it's quite a big institution, so you have to hold things tight. So, because depending on if NSFAS collapse in our hands, as needy families that will be affected and be responsible for them. So we then, of course, because of structures that we're involved in, we had programs. I think one of the programs we launched when we were in Nelson Mandela, it's a program called Operation Siangena. Operation Siangena was a program that was focusing in rural areas. We will visit rural schools, bring all relevant stakeholders, bring universities, bring colleges, bring funding institutions, your NSFAS, your FUNZA. We go to visit these rural schools because you'll find that they don't necessarily have this information. Even if they do have the information, about the infrastructure enough to apply on time and all those things. Umntana from the Baleni will struggle to travel from a Baleni, I will figure it down for and buy his application, and then I go check below application will respond to. So what we'll then do with Operation again, I will then visit these deep rural areas. It's a project that is still in action, it's still moving. Of course, we had other social engagements within the community. I think now one of the programs that I'm involved in, when I came back recently from Johannesburg, I stayed in Johannesburg for a year. When I came back, there's a project that we want to reactivate from government. We realized that from our community, we only have 2 high schools, which is Imari and Evundle. And if you look at those high schools, they are both located Kwawat 23. So unomndana osuka emapanoini that must walk ayofika esikolweni, nomntana osuka kwaGagane that must walk after school. And according to government scholar transport initiative, any child that walks above 5 kilometers will have scholar transport provided by government. It's one of the projects that we're pushing now to have. We are looking, we saw something, a good initiative in Johannesburg, concentration camp for young people who are involved in drugs. We see a lot of our peers that we grew up with, utibana bestratweni, umntomhloniphi ukhula naye, drug addict and all those things. So we're looking into those things. Quite a number of projects that we're involved in. And also, we have a program called Higher Graduate. I had a friend, Justice. He was going down with one of my friends, I think 6 weeks from now. We initially wanted to start this project where we assist graduates to find employment. If you look in the Alfred's origin, you have about 6 mega projects. You have Mtendu, this is construction alone. You have TCT, you have GEMJO, there's quite a number of projects. So we are trying to initiate this program where we engage with this institution, World Coast, Casino and other institutions to make sure that we assist these young graduates to get a job, get experience and all those things. You'll start seeing institutions such as SITAs visiting Alfred's more often because we write to them to tell them there are such graduates that need assistance. Please come visit them. Please assist them with whatever information. So Fumana Banduan, Bifumana as leadership and all those things. So we quite have a number of projects that we're dealing. Of course, we are also involved in the traditional leadership side. We work well with the chief. We have imbizo zamadoda pha esibizwayo sincedisana ababhuti bafuna endabeni and all those things. We took that responsibility because for some time young boys have been losing lives and all that. So we want to take responsibility as growing men to make sure that becomes safe. It goes back to what it was when during our time. So in terms of social activism, there's quite a lot of projects that we're involved in that we're trying to bring to the community.
Ngoba nimephi nelezi programs ezokuthi abantwana abasuka for example emabhanoyini baye kwezinye izikole ezikude, like senindawo phini izo programs?
Well, with scholar transport, we have returned officially to provincial government. We have communicated with the school principals. Fortunately, some of these principals also serve them in other structures. So we are able to communicate. We have returned to them formally to say that we need to initiate this. We have returned to the Taxi Association, because as much as it becomes a social initiative for young people, school learners, it becomes a business opportunity for the Taxi Association, because they'll be the ones providing that service. So we've returned to all relevant stakeholders. We are, of course, in engagement with government. They indicated that because they'd already allocated scholar transport for this year, so they are looking to then make sure that when they reallocate for next year, they include these routes. With other programs such as higher graduate, we are in engagement with the municipality. We have monthly engagements. There's a structure that I'm the part of called Business People, Business People. We engage with the municipality. We have monthly meetings where we try and make sure that even those who are in construction, those who are in security, those who have soft skills and all those other relevant skills, they get opportunities within their own region. So that one is in progress. What is a bit delaying but needs to be accelerated, it's this program of taking young people to school. We experience that there's a lot of young people who are dropping out. As much as we celebrate that young people have matriculated, if you look amongst those who have matriculated, how many of them actually go to higher institution of higher learning, you'll realize that a large number of them, they're not doing anything. And it becomes a risk, like I said, because once they fall into these social ills. Our communities, there's high level of drug usage, there's high level of teenage pregnancy, there's high level of crime and all those things. And innocent young people, they get to be in conflict with the law. Sometimes and once they get arrested, they never then change, because once they go there, they start seeing the other life and then they want to live that life. You realize that but with that one mistake, we fall on the other side of. So we need to accelerate that project. If I'm not mistaken, from the project initially, I think we've produced more than 2,000 graduates, assisting young people to go to university, to go to colleges. And even now, as I'm speaking, we're hosting COSASCA games. We're hosting the Minister of Higher Education here in Kamalake. We're trying to make sure that we're bringing these projects closer to home. We're bringing these big projects that we see with down school closer to home. So there's quite a number of these projects that we need to accelerate, and we need as many hands as we can use, if I may say.
All right, that's great. What do you hope to achieve in the next future?
Well, individually, dine family, and the responsibility in my family is quite a big one, because I think I was the first one. I'm the first of our generation to break that cycle. I was the first one to go to university. I was the first one. So you have to understand that you have a responsibility amongst your siblings, your parents, and all that. So for me, there's quite a lot. I have a daughter as well. Ndakhula ndizixelela kuba andifuni umntana ahambe endleleni endihambile. Sasikhula sifunde eplangeni kunetha, so kwakukhona into siyihlaba ngophondo. We teach a kid and then we put you back. So I don't want my child to go through such things, So I have quite a responsibility in making sure that I break that cycle of poverty in my family. And I have to make sure that it actually happens. I have my younger brother, he's in university now. I think some will know him. He's in leadership as well. He's doing his own thing. So I have my mom, I have my sisters and all that. So I have that responsibility. But from the social side, well, there's quite a lot of responsibility that we have as young people who at least are clued up on things, you know. Building a character, building a role model. We need to build a role model for our community. We need to have someone, young people, when they grow up, they say, you know, you don't want young people growing knowing that the only thing you can do is to pay a teacher, obey the police and all that, you know. You never knew when you see a prospectus and then you see radiograph, you see all these other things. We are you know, so we have to change that cycle in our communities too. We have to eradicate poverty. And it's difficult, and you know, you realize that we need to fight, we need to change our communities, because you see people that you grew up with, how they struggle, and you realize that you were the lucky one that you got out of that cycle. Now that you have that, like, because one thing we must always understand is that we have a bigger responsibility in changing our communities. So socially, I think what I would love to see is to have a better community. You know, I see we're improving slowly, but we need to make sure that we do better moving forward.
All right. What words of encouragement you like to leave for our viewers?
I don't know how to encourage people, but I think what I can say, whatever good is done to you is not for you. Pass it on.
Yeah.
If I do something good for you, do something good for the next person. If you do that, you keep the cycle moving. I think we can make the world a better place. I think we have a responsibility. One, you owe yourself being a better person. You owe people next to you being a better person. If you are a better person, there's a person who looks up to you to be a better person. So you are doing yourself a favor and you're doing that person a favor. And also, failure is associated with giving up. If you don't give up, you won't fail. But if you give up, then that's when failure comes. So for you and for others, don't give up, so that people can look up to you, that so if you keep fighting, fight for your space. That's all I can say.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, ababukele makhaya bangakufumana phi ke socials?
Well, I'm because of what I do, I'm all over internet. If you just go on internet, you'll find me. You'll find probably my social media handles. I'm very active on social media, both Facebook, Instagram, and you know, you can comment. Of course, there are office-related communications. I do have an office in Pretoria. Those details are available online if you want to communicate officially. And of course, I normally interact with people when I meet them on my spaces. So I'm quite an available guy. No kid on jail to can find me, you know.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
To my guest, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you today. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today up at South Africa Unfiltered. Goodbye and God bless.